plan on doing coffee cup is showing. I didn't plan on really doing any shows tonight, but I'm up, I'm caffeinated, so let's do the news. Bernie Sanders. So Bernie Sanders has come out with an apology. No, Bernie Sanders didn't hit anybody. No, Bernie Sanders didn't touch anyone appropriately. And no, Bernie Sanders didn't even know about it, but it was on the Bernie Sanders campaign. So Bernie Sanders, being Bernie Sanders, is coming out and giving his apology. The apology is not purely because Bernie Sanders is Bernie Sanders. There's a political aspect to this where you can't necessarily hide stuff like this. You have to confront it. And the more it goes unconfronted, the more problematic it becomes you in a political space, especially in the Me Too era, where this could be treacherous territory. So let's go into the story real quick, and this one is going to be relatively fast because I have another one I want to do that I just came across. So, Bernie Sanders apologizes to women harassed during his campaign. What it boils down to is Politico reported Thursday morning that Sanders' former Iowa campaign manager was part of a $30,000 federal discrimination settlement with two former employees. Now again, Sanders didn't know anything about this, or at the very least Sanders denied knowing about the settlement to reporters. And when something like this happens, you can ignore it or you can get ahead of it. Getting ahead of it, especially when you didn't have anything to do about it, is far better of a political course, with the secondary aspect of this of upping whatever safeguards you have to ensure that the people on your staff and your campaign are safe. Men, women, kids, whatever. You shouldn't be having kids working on the campaign, at least in a labor way. But you get what I'm saying. Whoever's working on this campaign, and in whatever capacity they're working on the campaign, should be safe. And it is to some degree for the person who is at the head of that campaign to ensure that the people in that campaign are safe, at least to the degree that they can. Bernie Sanders is not Jesus. He doesn't have magical powers where he can stop people from behaving in particular ways, and apparently even Jesus can't do that. So, that said, he's doing what he's supposed to do, and he comes out and gives an apology, at least from a political aspect. The secondary aspect to that is if something was amiss in the rule set or the way that they were organized to try to fix it. Catch of the matter is human beings are human beings, and they act in certain ways. And Bernie Sanders cannot stop people from behaving those ways. That said, he comes out and does what he needs to do from a political standpoint, even though this is the limits of human ability. So I am very proud of the 2016 presidential campaign we ran and of the staff and volunteers who made successes possible, Sanders said in a statement posted on Twitter. God, man, it always feels so trivial to me when they add Twitter behind a statement that's being said, even though the thing that's being said could have monumental proportions. When Donald Trump is on Twitter, and I still say there is nothing more ridiculous than a tweet, or call it the term tweet, says something like he's talking shit to other nations. Like, you know, when he was having a back and forth with Kim Jong-un. It's just a little odd time that we're in. However, to the women who were allegedly harassed, he said, what they experienced was absolutely unacceptable and what a progressive campaign or any campaign should be about. That is true. Lefties have a certain way about us with stuff about harassment, multiculturalness, and interconnectedness. So it makes this a little bit more because you're going against the culture itself in order to behave this way. But people are people. He mentioned that he had worked to strengthen federal sexual harassment policy in 2018. Clearly, we need a cultural revolution in this country to change the workplace attitudes and behavior. I intend in every way to be actively involved in that process, Sanders wrote. So interestingly enough, the fact that we're having this conversation right now to some degree is a showing that there has been somewhat of a cultural revolution. Maybe not necessarily in how people are at a core level, but certainly in a way that's become what's acceptable and what a society allows to be acceptable. Meaning it is acknowledged and understood that there is a culture that will back up somebody who's coming forward about a harassment claim. To some degree, you've had somewhat of a cultural revolution. I'm not saying that's purely indicative of Sanders. I'm just saying to some degree, that has been the case. Like I said, this one is not long. Sanders' tweet is in the ad itself, but sexual harassment claim with Sanders. Well, somebody in the Sanders campaign, Sanders didn't know about it. Sanders couldn't do anything about it. For a secondary point, before I end this, I have to be honest. I consider, let me say it this way. I am paranoid. And just because I'm paranoid doesn't necessarily mean that people aren't watching me. What I mean by that is, the media itself that comes out, media is not a singular innocent thing. That news and information that comes out, these things are weapons to some degree. The people who are putting this information out are not purely and solely, you know, they have no biases or no dog in this particular fight. There is media that comes out that is pretty straightforward in its objectives, where it has some incentive to put some particular story out and runs with the incentive. But at that point, it's somewhat of an autonomous process. There is other parts where you have political actors that have some kind of incestuous relationship with the media apparatus, and stories flow as leaks, but those leaks are being done so for political reasons. This story that comes out that is given this kind of omniscient point of view, as if it's the word of God explaining word by word what took place, with anonymous sources saying such, where you can never interrogate the thing, but at some point there's an incestuous relationship there between the media space and the political space. So stories that come out about Sanders, I am overtly paranoid about, on whether or not it's trending from this is just a political story that's interesting about Sanders because it's Bernie Sanders and we can hit Bernie Sanders on this and, you know, get a little bit of information, as opposed to there are political actors who want to hit Sanders in the knees on this, in which case stories are put out in order to do so. And by the way, this is not just about Sanders. This is all of these guys, to some degree, will be sharks. And these sharks will have their own people who they engage with. The, what is it called? The initiative thing that was in Britain, where under the guise of quote-unquote fighting brewskis, they formed a relationship with media personnel in various countries around the globe. In which case a story will come out, they will push the story to the people, and they will push a singular perspective on that story in order to change public will and to some degree harass, and in some cases even lose people positions that they were going to be given from the public space. Like, there was a case about what took place in Spain where they organized essentially media coming out with one singular focus. Even though these guys were being pushed for political reasons, the media was coming out as if they were coming out as singular sources, autonomous. They were not. So, just saying. Not saying the story is that. I'm just saying that will take place and that will happen. So, let's see. Oh, I don't want to keep this one long because I have another one that's coming up immediately after this. Oh, God. It looks like the media's weird today. All right. In this. Just finished editing a video about the attacks against Gabber for being homophobic. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. I don't know what to think about that one. Alright, I'm gonna end this. If you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support through Patreon. I'm always shocked by anybody would care enough to make a video about me. But fair enough. I'll check the video out to see if Tulsi is indeed homophobic. I don't think she is. I have a hard time believing that she's homophobic. Alright. I'll see you guys in a few.